All right, we're in it. We're back, and more importantly, this is March.
Sure
We
is.
are dangerously close to Selection Sunday. It is sneaking up on us faster than you can even anticipate. League tournament play got started tonight. We got 1 week of the regular season left, and all the power leagues and everything. So we are officially in the home stretch, getting down to it. And it'll be just me and you again tonight because Jacob is in a slumber. So down him again, but me and you once again will hold it down. So yeah, late night. Shout out to anybody who tunes in. Y'all are the real ones. But yeah, let me get all these tweeted out and all. But how are you doing tonight, my friend?
Not bad. Slate of games today. Shockingly, both from college and the NBA. NBA actually did deliver some good games today for those of you who care. But yeah, good slate of games. Can't complain for the last big weekend slate of games, I should say, before conference tournament play kicks off. And yeah, I guess we're already underway with Atlantic Sun stuff. So
Yeah, would we have a 28-0 run
it was
to
quite a game of
to
runs there. Central Arkansas and Stetson there. Central Arkansas ended up winning that by 5, but yeah, what's his name? Maya Turner had 37 for Central Arkansas, so he'll be playing for some, I would imagine, power conference team here in the future. And yeah, the final day of the MoVal regular season was great. Got really good games out of Drake and Missouri State and Bradley and Northern Iowa. That was a battle for the 2 seed in Arch Madness, so that was a good game as well. That was ultimately Bradley pulled away and won that one. So good day of games today.
we got our ridiculous Sun Belt brackets and West
West
Coast
Coast
Conference
practice. Yep.
brackets
The gauntlet's ready.
or brackets or something.
Yeah, those are fun.
Can you hear me? I lost you for a second, but can you hear me?
You are live. Yes, sir. You are live.
Sweet. Okay. Yeah, I accidentally clicked on another video while I'm tweeting all these out, so I screwed it up for a second. Yeah, I'm just finished getting out. I don't imagine that there will be a big crowd of people ready to tune into this thing at 11 on the East, 10 Central Time. But shout out to anybody who does. But yeah, as I finished getting all these retweeted and all, so yeah, let's get started with the good stuff. I'm excited to talk about Auburn is the outright Southeastern Conference champions of 2024-2025 season. Went into Rupp and absolutely, I don't know if you saw the clip, put the belt to Kentucky's
Sure
ass
did. Yeah.
quite literally after the game with the belt. That was an awesome celebration. But yeah, first win in Rupp for Auburn since 1988. Awesome game. Would have been more awesome to watch the whole thing. First of all, I don't like the ESPN just completely
Yes.
gave out. My friend who was at the game told me that the ABC truck caught on fire.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, so that is the report I got from Lexington, Kentucky as to why the end of that game was not broadcast. I was on Auburn's YouTube channel watching they had a camera on the radio announcers calling the game, and
Goodness.
that was that was the end of how I got to watch that one. But yeah, Auburn clinched a share of the SEC title after that win, and then later with Tennessee's win over Alabama, which we will get to, clinched an outright SEC title. But yeah, great win for Auburn. They went on the road and left no doubt in a game that they were a small favorite, and a lot of people thought Kentucky might be able to hold it down at home. But that was just another awesome performance for this Auburn team. And especially they did it again in this one where Broome did not have a great game at all. Probably had his worst game as an Auburn Tiger, period. And Kentucky did a great job defending him. But Miles Kelly was absolutely incredible in this game, among others. We had Chris Moore knocking down threes. A lot to be happy about. And yeah, so another great one for Auburn, and I guess questions are starting to arise about Kentucky. I saw a tweet that I thought was a little crazy earlier, where did Kentucky make a mistake hiring
A
Mark Stoops?
little, yeah. We're into full on crazy here. Yeah, that's not surprising from that fan base though. So
That was from
not expecting
FanDuel
anything
for what
else.
it's worth. So
Sure, yeah,
they tweeted that.
they've had some, you know, provocative ones. Or I think that's what they're trying to do. After
I think,
Colorado beat TCU in Coach Prime's debut,
yeah,
they were like,
he
"Oh,
beat
who would
UCLA.
win 2019 LSU or this Colorado team?" So they're good at that stuff. Shout out to FanDuel. Yeah, they do good with those kind of tweets.
Yeah, speaking of FanDuel, with Janai Broom's game yesterday, worth mentioning too. He went back to the underdog in the National Player of the
Hmm.
Year race after that game. I was watching the odds slowly dwindle as that game went on. Definitely was not a great game for Janai, but I mean, there's a lot to be said about where he can have a game like that, and Auburn just has enough guys where if he has an off night, it doesn't completely wreck the whole ship. Like they still had plenty to get it done. Like I said, Miles Kelly had 30 points. He was absolutely incredible in this game. Uh, he was definitely the MVP for Auburn. But yeah, another great offensive performance. Chad had 22. I showed you before we started. Got my brand new Chad shirt on right now. I know he's your favorite player, but he had 22. Tahad had 21. Yeah, so that was an awesome one. Auburn continues to roll, and the outright SEC title is on lock. And also for Kentucky, uh, sucks to hear that Jackson Robinson's college career came to an end. They announced he will be out for the season. So
Terrible.
that was yeah, that sucks for them. Always hate when that happens for everybody. But yeah, wasn't a bad performance by Kentucky. I didn't think. I mean, defensively it was. They can't defend anybody. That's just kind of been accepted with them at this point. But like, they scored 78 on an Auburn team that can defend well. Like they didn't like. I didn't think it was like a terrible like Butler was bad, but I didn't think Kentucky was like awful in this game. I think they just ran into a better team.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they were awful either. I think they certainly didn't play their best game. They knew they were gonna have to, score a shit ton of points to beat them tonight or on Saturday. But yeah, it was there were some concerning signs, I would say. One of which, I mean, Kobe Bryant was the only Kentucky player who made a three on the entire game. That is probably not going to be sustainable going forward for them.
Definitely
Um,
not.
I mean, they got to the line in this game 38 times. And usually, when a team gets to the free throw line 38 times in a game, that is usually a decent indicator of, that team probably is going to win this one, or minimum, not get crushed by 16 here. So, yeah, I mean, there are some concerns. I think they did a good job on Janai. Um, but yeah, for Miles Kelly to make 9 threes and to be in a position to attempt 14 of them, yeah, just defensively, they're all out of sorts. We knew going in that they're not, defense is not something they hang their hat on particularly. But yeah, it just wasn't good enough to beat that Auburn team. The shots were not falling from deep. Um, and yeah, just the current construction of that team, morale does not seem very high on the Kentucky side of things. Um, Going into SEC tournament play pretty soon here, I would not expect them to be a team that anyone in their right mind has going pretty far in this thing. So they still got everything they really needed out of Kobe Bray. Andrew Carr played a really good game for them, but yeah, it wasn't Butler's best, and the bench, they just got nothing from their bench all game. So yeah, pretty rough one for Kentucky. But yeah, credit to Auburn. That's a as we've talked about before, they're the best team in the country right now. They get 9 points out of their best player, and they still score 94. So um, yeah, against other teams that might be good enough where you shut down their best guy, but not this Auburn group. So yeah, I don't think it was good enough from Kentucky. I do think the conversations about Pope are certainly premature. Give him some time to get his guys in there. see what he can do. But yeah, I would say that Kentucky fans, this would probably not have been an acceptable, season for them thus far here. 19-10, 8-8 in the SEC. I don't think that would be good enough for their standards. I think, despite the conference being as good as it's been, it's still, Kentucky expects to be in the upper echelon of that group instead of the middle of the pack. So yeah, I think Kentucky fans are pretty frustrated. But yeah, this one should be about just you know really impressive Auburn performance just to get only 9 out of Janai. They got absolutely nothing out of Cardwell, and still 94-point game. So
And also,
um,
Denver Jones went down early in this game too
mm,
for Auburn, which is of concern. But doesn't sound like it's too bad. His mom actually tweeted an injury update. But yeah, they're unsure. Yeah, I'd be surprised if he played against A&M, and then we'll see about next Saturday against Alabama. He'll love to be back for that one, but kind
yeah,
of
I
like
mean,
there's
really, it's one of those things where does it make sense to play him the rest of the regular season? Considering they've already won the conference title, the regular season title, and their status as a 1 seed remains, you know, unthreatened. It's
not
just
just that, but Auburn, they have the number one overall seed in the tournament probably on lock at this point.
they should.
Like
I would say they should. I don't think it's gonna get in the way of that. But yeah, let me ask you this: last year, Auburn won the SEC tournament championship. I remember that was a big one for the Auburn folk. Where does that rank among the, regular season championship? Does the conference tournament mean more, or the regular season mean more here?
um, that's tough. I think this year in particular, like this iteration of winning the regular season is probably the most like impressed just because of like how dominant this particular team has been. I would say this one is top, but like those I don't I it's kind of tough to say because those tournament runs are so like those are I mean obviously like to go like 4 wins in 4 days and go on those
Sure,
runs like they are super fun. So it's like there's something special about winning those conference tournaments, but also on the flip side, like winning the regular season is kind of more of a season long accomplishment and usually is a better form to like how successful your team has been. Where like when you win those conference tournaments, as we saw last year, like it meant nothing for Auburn's seeding. Like Auburn pretty still got a pretty rough draw even after because I think the bracket like the selection committee just kind of gets lazy sometimes and when those conference tournaments end on Sunday
yeah,
they kind of already
they
have the
already have
bracket.
it in mind. Yeah,
Yeah, and they don't make adjustments, but like, so I would say this regular season tournament, just with how good this team has been, is probably the most. But obviously, like the 2019 SEC tournament, that is like that's the run that vaulted that team to a Final Four run. So there's something about when you're not like that dominant team all year, those conference tournaments can really vault you to an insane like to getting somewhere and like that's what that 2019 team where like the 2019 team got beat by 30 in Rupp
sure.
that year
Yeah,
in February, but they went on that run in St. Was that St.
yeah,
Louis? There was one year it was in St. Louis, or I think that was still Nashville. But yeah, that
beat
run
them
in
in the Elite
Nashville,
Eight. Yeah,
yeah, and then they ran it all the way to the Final Four that year, and obviously the SEC championship last year was kind of diminished by 4 days later. Your
yeah,
season's over against Yale, but
yeah.
yeah, I don't. That's a good question though. It is kind of hard to. I mean, I'll ask you the same question as a fan. Like, I don't. I guess UConn. I know you were a
I mean,
Kansas
I
fan
think
in the
it's
past,
different.
but
Like it's a different for the SEC and the ACC. Well, at least when the ACC was in Greensboro, that meant a lot. But I do think the SEC still has like it's harder to say because like obviously any mid-major conference, it's a huge deal to win the conference tournament because that's your ticket to get to NCAA tournament play. With the SEC, they still have there's just so much pride in that conference, and I think it means more now, especially because that kind of used to be the Kentucky Invitational or the Florida Invitational. Now
Yeah.
there's so many more teams that compete for that title, and the conference is where it is now, which is at unprecedented heights here. Um, the kind of the old Big East tournament had those vibes as well. All those teams at Madison Square Garden, that was a huge deal, and with the Big East still kind of has that, but it's really only with like a few teams. Like I don't think like every team in that conference. I don't think DePaul is bringing a huge contingent to MSG to see the
Yeah.
Blue Demons get shellacked necessarily. So
I
yeah,
remember we went to the Big Ten tournament first round the one year.
yeah,
Me,
yeah,
Christian, and Lucas. It was, who did
yeah.
we
So
see? It was
but
it was Penn
it's
State
like
and
Rutgers and
Nebraska
yeah,
and Ohio State and Rutgers. I think.
yeah. So I mean, in the Big Ten tournament, it feels like it changes every year. The SEC, it matters, and it like the SEC being the conference it is now, and the pride everyone has in that league, I would say it definitely, yeah, it should mean more than it would like for a Big Ten or ACC type thing. But yeah, it's a because I do think like for the Big Ten today, seeing Michigan State go a game up on it, I do think that means more to them winning the regular season title than the conference tournament championship, and
Yeah.
I think that means more.
And I think
So
this year in this iteration of the SEC, where it might very well be like the best conference of all time in a single season,
yeah,
like there's a ton of pride to like being able to say with 2 games to go, you clinched an outright title in what very well
sure,
may
yeah,
be the greatest conference of all time. And ideally, like it would be just as special to go to Nashville and go on that run and be able to say you swept the regular season and league tournament and in this iteration of the SEC.
yeah, agreed there.
So yeah, this is Bruce Pearl's fifth of whatever iteration. It's his fifth SEC title at Auburn. It's his third regular season title and and he's won 2 conference tournament titles. So fifth SEC championship for Bruce Pearl at Auburn. Um, yeah, I mean, there's nothing more I can say without being redundant about how awesome this team is and how awesome it's been for Bruce Pearl. And it's you got 2 games left and you're pretty much playing with house money. I mean, we got A&M Tuesday, and then uh, obviously I don't care if we have we have the number one overall seed locked up. Probably, yeah, we clinched the S's, but still want to beat Bama next Saturday and get the
Sure.
sweep.
Yeah, that never goes. And that I think is the difference between the SEC and some of these other conferences. I do not think there's that much animus if Michigan State goes up 2 games on Michigan and they play the last game at the Breslin Center. I don't get the vibe that Michigan State's going to sell out to try and beat Michigan. And I will I mean and there's just no way that like Auburn doesn't go balls to the wall to make sure that Bama doesn't beat them at home. Like, there's no way. So,
Yeah, like you were mentioning the
yeah,
Denver Jones injury earlier. Like I would, unless like his injury is actually like pretty significant. Like if it's something where he can play, I would be surprised if he missed that game on Saturday.
yeah, because he was really the key to slowing Sears down. So,
Yeah, like they're gonna need Denver Jones in that one.
yeah,
Like
for sure.
especially like if he's hurt, then you're down to Kelly and Pettiford's gonna start, and it's him and Kelly in the backcourt. You're probably looking at CBM playing like a decent amount of minutes at guard to fill for that. Maybe be looking at JP Pegues back in the rotation, getting some minutes, which I
Yeah.
don't think any of us want to see at this point.
Jacob wants to
So,
see. Yeah, but
but yeah, no, awesome. But yeah, we should probably talk about. So that game was to clinch the share. So
mhm.
I imagine it'd probably be smart to talk about the game that clinched the outright, and that was the Alabama Tennessee game. And what a crazy sequence there for Tennessee to win that one. And just my main takeaway for that is, I've mentioned it on here before, but with Nate Oates and their defensive struggles as a team, and that last possession on defense where they just let Tennessee walk down the court and get a wide open look to win the game, it was mind boggling. Like what was going on there? Like they did not defend that well at all. I don't know what happened. Oates took the blame for it and was like, "Yeah, that one was on me." He didn't try to deflect that blame or anything. He was like, "Yep, I screwed that one up." But yeah, I mean, it just goes to show what we're saying. Me personally, obviously biased. I don't think defense is enough of a priority in that program, and they obviously weren't ready to defend that last play. And Tennessee basically caught them asleep, and Meshack had a perfect look for that shot, nailed it. Um, yeah, so 79-76 was the final there. Uh, so what'd you think of that one?
Yeah, as for the final possession, it seemed a lot of people were fooled by well, it was total chaos. Zakai Ziegler is demanding a timeout. Rick Barnes is demanding a timeout. He barely seemed like he celebrated the shot going in
Rick
because he
Barnes was
wanted a
still
timeout.
pissed. Like
Yeah,
there's a shot of the ball in the basket, and Rick Barnes was still pissed. Like
yeah, it was total mayhem on the last possession for them. And yeah, I think that, it really just a drop of the ball there by Bama. And I think they were expecting a timeout to be called and it wasn't granted and they get burned for it. And, Meshack hadn't taken a three on the game until that shot and just kind of happened and there it was. But yeah, that's a loss. I don't think that's a really good loss for Bama for a lot of reasons. Obviously, it's never good when you lose, but the way that they lost, like, missing free throws, they were comfortably outplayed in the second half of that game. I thought Tennessee made some really strong adjustments on them, and they, completely just from a scoring perspective took Grant Nelson out of the game. Um, they just, cut off Youngblood. It was
Dolph's
really
out
just,
apparently.
yeah, it was really just the guards for Bama that had anything going. And yeah, give them credit. I am not very high on Tennessee. I do not think they're going to go particularly far in NCAA tournament play. They proved me wrong last year. Um, but yeah, that's a huge win for them. Anytime they get to 79 points in a game should be a huge deal for Tennessee. And yeah, I don't think Bama defensively was bad in this game. I think they defended well enough to win. I think they would probably say themselves they defended well enough to win, but yeah, they just couldn't close. And yeah, credit to Tennessee, just enough like more winning plays than what Bama had there. So yeah, not really much to hold like critical of Bama here, but just the way they closed that game, playing down the stretch, missing free throws, as we talked about not picking up really the only guy who's going to shoot the ball in that last possession. You got to stop the ball. That's rule number one, and they didn't do that. So yeah, I would say Tennessee deserved to beat them. They outplayed them in the second half. So yeah, give Rick Barnes credit. That was just huge win for that program, and yeah, for Bama, just total failure by at the end of that game by them. And Nato can take all the blame he wants, but his players should know enough fundamental defense to pick up Meshack in that situation, and they paid the price. So yeah, that game had huge implications for the conference, and yeah, not really sure what this means for Bama going forward in the sense of like how they're going to approach the rest of some of the. They're still in play for the one seed, obviously, that they're playing for. I don't know what it means for Tennessee's seeding is probably still kind of unchanged in my opinion. I don't think they're deserving of a one seed, but I think that
Well,
that conversation is going to get started now after that win. There are going to be a lot of people saying that Tennessee should be on the one line, and I would imagine that's probably going to be decided through SEC tournament play. And if Bama were to knock off Auburn in the last game of the season, that might be enough to get them on the one line there. But yeah, that's
Jerry
going to be a
Palm
story to watch.
Jerry Palm in his newest bracket today did have Tennessee leapfrog Alabama for a 1 seed. It like after this result, which is key. So like I say, as an Auburn fan too, like I was really hoping for that because if Bama gets a 1 seed, then we'll have to share Lexington with Alabama, and
Yeah.
I would much not want that to happen. So if Tennessee gets that 1 seed over Alabama, then Tennessee would go to Lexington instead of Alabama. And yeah, I would rather share Lexington with Tennessee fans than Alabama fans. But um, I'll need to see check Lenardi's bracket from today again. But yeah, this like I checked Palms right before we came. I just checked to make sure I had it right. But yeah,
Lenardi still has Tennessee on the 2 line. Now he did not make. This is not from today that I'm looking at. But yeah, he had Tennessee on the 2 line going into that. But I think he had Houston as the final 1 seed. So we'll see if that changes any. But yeah, that's going to be a huge storyline to watch. I do think there is a huge difference for Bama whether they are a 1 or a 2 seed. I think that matters, and um, yeah, sense of urgency for them should be through the roof going into final couple games here. And yeah, I think a 1 seed for them absolutely matters. I think that's going to be a huge deal.
I mean, this is the difference. It's like so. I'm looking at Palms right now. So this moved Tennessee into a 1 seed in the West, and they would go to Lexington the first weekend. They would potentially have to play UConn in the second round, so that would be tough. But in this region, the 2 seed is Wisconsin, and the difference in that. So now they have Bama as a 2 seed, and they have them as a 2 seed in Duke's region. So that's the difference between possibly an Elite Eight game against Wisconsin or Duke. Like
Yeah,
that.
and
So
it's
that
it's just a different road if you're a 2 than a 1. There's a little more there, like it's significantly more likely you get kind of like a 5-12 or 4-13 than a 14 beating a 3. And some of those teams on 3 line, like, Texas Tech would be a horrible matchup for Bama if they saw each other in a Sweet 16. If, they, I get, like Memphis was on the 7 line going into yesterday, that would be a terrible matchup for Bama. So, I think that matters. I think they would much rather see, like, if they're a 1 seed, a Gonzaga or a UConn or a team that is not resting their laurels on defense, than if they were to run into someone on that 7 line,
well,
or a 10 line or a three
Maryland.
seed.
Palm had
Yeah,
Maryland on
that's
that
a
seven
tough.
line.
I mean, I think
Yeah,
Bama would beat Maryland, but it's a different game. It's just a like I personally would have Maryland higher than that, but still, like, you could potentially like run into a team like an Ole Miss, Louisville, or any one of those, Creighton, maybe BYU, just like for some reason played a randomly ratcheted up defensive game against West Virginia. So yeah, I think there is just a huge, huge difference in being a 1 and being a 2 in NCAA tournament play. It might seem, not that big of a deal, but it just is. And there's just a reason why more of these 1 seeds basically feel as if they have a bye to Sweet 16 play most of the time. Then these 2 seeds over the years have really had to scrap through some of these teams on 7 and 10 line. So we'll see what happens, but yeah, I think that should matter for Bama, and I think that should be a huge priority for them and for Tennessee. Like, that's just they went through it. They seem to go through that every other year. Like,
I
all
mean,
their tournament games are grinds anyway.
I can speak from experience. We got a 2 seed and got run off the fucking
Yeah,
floor by
Miami just crushed
Miami.
them. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I was unfortunately there for that one, but yeah, like been there and experienced that. Like, you can run into some pretty good teams on that 7-10 line for sure.
100%.
Um,
Yeah,
um, as for Tennessee though, like I don't know. I've kind of agreed with you most of the year that like yeah, this isn't a team that can make a Final Four run. But the thing is, it's like, do they have some dud games where you doubt them? Yeah, but like every single time they played one of the upper echelon teams of the SEC besides the first time they played Florida. Like they went into Auburn and they showed up, barely lost that game. They played Florida again and blew Florida's doors off. Held them to what, 41 points in that game or
Yeah.
whatever it was. They play Alabama and they get it done. Like they're like watching them play, and they played A&M last week and beat them. Like they, it's hard to watch them beat and compete with these upper echelon SEC teams and be like, okay, this isn't a team that can go on a Final Four run. Like I agree, stylistically, it's gonna be tough for them to make that run, but when I just look at the baseline of how they've played against these top teams in the SEC this year, it's hard for me to doubt them. Like they've shown in those games that they can play with anybody in the nation. I mean, they went on the road against Auburn and gave Auburn everything they could handle, and like Auburn had by far their worst offensive output of the season. Uh, they were able to slow Bama up. Like they beat the shit out of Florida. They beat A&M. Like yeah, it's hard for me to doubt them and be like, yeah, this isn't a team that can go on a Final Four run when they've had those outcomes in those games.
Yeah, I mean, this is the best. This is the best offensive team Tennessee. I think they're slight. I know they had the connect factor last year, but this might be the best offensive team Rick Barnes has had at Tennessee probably since that 2019 team they had. That was like Grant Williams, Admiral Schofield. They got beat by Purdue in Sweet 16 that year. That was a really good team offensively. They were actually not as good of a defensive team as what they've been recently here, but yeah, I mean, the shooting sometimes can go cold. That's one of the factors that has gotten them into trouble at times. But yeah, they eat. You kind of need to have a complete offensive game to beat them. And the game they played against Auburn, I do think they probably would have won that game on a neutral floor or at Tennessee because of the way it was
Agreed.
played. And it was such a like grinded, like it was played at exactly their pace and exactly the tempo they wanted it at. But yeah, the rest of their games this year, for some reason they can't figure out Kentucky. I still don't have an explanation for how they can, you know, beat Bama and like, hold Auburn to fucking 53 points and then they can't beat Kentucky. But yeah, really the only truly bad losses they have are obviously that Florida game and then, at Rupp. But they certainly could. It would not floor me if they were in the Final Four because there is a scenario where that happens and they get the matchups they need in order to do that. Their recent run of games has been pretty impressive if you take out the Kentucky results. Um, yeah, they are that kind of team. They are capable of doing that. And yeah, I am not a huge Zakai Ziegler guy, but the complement of guys around him is, there's a scenario where it's good enough that they are making a Final Four run, and that's a mature old team. Like it's a bunch of seniors. I mean, it's really just entirely seniors. Anyone who gets minutes or really gets looks on offense is an upperclassman or senior. So it's an
Let
old group. And yeah, it's an old experienced group that, why not them? I could see them getting in to a Final Four scenario, that kind of thing. But um, yeah, it's really just can the offense pick them up and give them at minimum like 65 points in some of these games because you would think their defense in a neutral court scenario would be enough to hold up. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me. I'm in a scenario now where, I was like, absolutely not. There's no way that, they're getting past Sweet 16. Now I'm certainly entertaining. I don't see them as a team that's going to win a national championship right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up in the Final Four somehow. So yeah,
let
they
me give you
certainly
a
have it in them.
let me give you a hypothetical like region for Tennessee. This is off Palm's bracket he put out today. And just like I'm looking at this region and I'm like, I think Tennessee would come out of this region. So here's the rundown: Tennessee's 1, Wisconsin 2, A&M 3, Iowa State 4, Mississippi State 5, Arizona 6, Louisville 7, BYU UConn is the 8-9, San Diego State 10. The 11 is a first four game. And then 12, Drake, 13, Yale, Utah Valley, Norfolk, and Omaha would play Tennessee in the first round. But out of that region, I would take Tennessee there. Maybe Iowa State, like they seemed like they were correcting some of their issues yesterday if they're getting healthy. Um, so I think Iowa State would definitely be a player there. That would be a good Sweet 16 game with Tennessee and Iowa State if that happened. But and I can run. I know I've ran through it kind of quick, so if you need me to run through it again uh, while you're trying to predict that, I can. But
Yeah, I mean I could see that like potential of Iowa State, Tennessee, like that would, put the over under for that one at like 110. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they did in that region. They conveniently match up really well with a lot of those teams. If Wisconsin is a 2 seed in that bracket, that I think they probably would handle Wisconsin. It's just, the big thing with them is that I just kind of need to see them just crush other teams. That's like kind of if in order for this team to win a national championship, and that might be the case for a lot of teams. They're just like it was for Virginia when they won. You're just going to have to grind all these games out because of how committed they are to playing a just kind of methodical style on offense, and they do not like they force enough turnovers to be dangerous on defense, but that's not really the name. Like that's not how they make their money defending. So yeah, I mean they don't have a team that would be in that region that could like run them off the floor in that way that like kind of how Florida could when they played them. Um, but yeah, it would be tough. It would just be a region they would have to grind out those games in the Elite Eight, Sweet 16. They have the guys to do it. And this is like I had said before, this is probably the best team they've had on offense in the Rick Barnes era for many years now, since that 2019 team. So yeah, I would probably pick them in that bracket. But in the Lenardi bracket, he had them as a 2, and Memphis would be the 7 seed there. That would be a grind, like on
that'd
a
be a
neutral
hell of
floor.
a hell of a
Yeah, like,
like round two game
and
between them.
then their 3 seed would be Texas Tech, and that would be like those teams are fairly similar in how they play, and like it. I don't know if I would err more on the Texas Tech side of things, but yeah, that I mean, it really just depends on matchups for them. If they get a run of some of those teams that they can really grind down and play to a halt, like yeah, I could definitely. It's just a team that I wouldn't be shocked, and it shouldn't shock anyone. Like no one should be surprised if Tennessee were in the Final Four somehow. Um, that shouldn't be a surprise. If they won a national championship, I'd be very impressed. Somewhat surprised there, but yeah, I just it shouldn't surprise anyone if they were to make a Final Four.
Yep. All right. Next one I'll get to. That I guess in the rundown of importance, this one probably isn't too high, but I know with you it has to be discussed. Arkansas got absolutely shelled on the road at South Carolina. That was a tough one. Arkansas seemed like they were trending towards being pretty safely in, and this knocked them way down. Where like wherever you look, they're definitely back in Dayton, and now they're either barely in or barely out wherever you look, and like this one hurt them a lot. That was a bad loss at South Carolina. Um, we've talked about South Carolina a decent amount on here and mentioned that like yeah they're not a bad team, like they play teams tough and everything, but I don't think
Sure, if they
anybody
were in another
expected
conference.
yeah I don't think anybody expected Arkansas to go in there and just get completely shelled the way they scored 14 points in the first half. That was a terrible game. for Arkansas. Colin Murray Boyles played great. He's probably going to be a lottery pick. He's a
Yeah,
very talented
easily.
player.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but that was just an awful performance for Arkansas. I'm just like pulling up this box score. Um, DJ Wagner was 2 for 10 from the field. Knox was their leading scorer. He had 11 points. He was 2 for 6 from the field. Um, Janelle Davis was terrible again. Yeah, just a bad performance for Arkansas. And this was on the heels of this. So this was an early tip, and on game day, Seth Greenberg said this is one of Cal's best coaching jobs of his career this year, which was quite the take. I don't think you would agree with that. I don't think a
No.
lot of people would. Um, Goodman had a good tweet. I know you kind of pushed back on it, but I did like his tweet. The PR firm of Greenberg and
Yeah.
Greenberg. Um, yeah, man, that was tough performance for Arkansas, and I just need the pulse of Cal Nation to respond to this one.
Yeah, so nothing good to report on that one. First of all, just yeah, huge shout out to South Carolina. Just have had a pretty rough year, and yeah, there are always some people that are like, "Why is Colin Murray Boyles going to be a lottery pick?" Well, that's why, because he just pretty much single handedly took down that Arkansas team on his own. Kentucky, or I'm seeing it's creature habit here. Still calling Cal's team Kentucky. No, Arkansas just you can't. There's no excuse. It's not as if they ran into a buzzsaw. You ran into South Carolina, which is at best like a 2 or 3 man team. It's literally like Colin Murray Boyles and Nick Pringle. That's what they have. And yeah, for DJ Wagner, for Nelly Davis and uh Ivisic, just trash. Just a horrendous game all around. There's nothing good to take from this one. It's extremely disappointing because, after for for Arkansas, after that horrible loss at Missouri they had in January, they have been playing really well. They've been playing like a tournament team, um, way better than they were playing at the beginning of the season. Uh, I thought they played really well at Auburn. They beat Missouri, who Missouri is better than them, and they still found a way to beat them. They beat Texas. They survived. Just an incredible individual effort that they had to stop, and they just laid an egg. And it was set up really well for them to, get out of Dayton, and they were probably going to be a 10 seed, and no questions asked. But now they're in a situation where they got to go to Vanderbilt, and whether Cal's been at Kentucky, Arkansas, Memphis, doesn't matter. They always seem to struggle at Vanderbilt, and then Mississippi State, and that's not going to be an easy game either because Mississippi State's probably staring down like probably a 7 seed themselves. So not a good situation for them. The way they lost was extremely alarming. It was not as if like South Carolina just came and put in an extraordinary effort. Kentucky just shot the ball horribly. Um, Offensively, nothing was working. The sets they were running were just lazy. They just everything they ran for Vicic was horrible. Everything they ran for Nelly Davis was horrible. And yeah, it was hard to watch. Like just a terrible basketball game. I feel bad for anyone who did put themselves through that, but yeah, just really disappointing after just a really good stretch of basketball by them. And yeah, as you said, they're probably still in the first four out, or excuse me, the first four buys, but they're probably the last team. They're probably like one of the last 5 or 6 teams in the field right now, which is not where they should be. Now they can play themselves off of that by, you know, winning probably one of these next 2 games that they have. But yeah, it's just a crushing defeat that they're going to have to regroup from, and yeah, that's not where they should be. But inexcusable all the way around. There's not much you can say. It's just
The
like
palm bracket, the palm bracket I'm referencing, by the way, has Arkansas and Dayton right now. So just wanted to note that. You muted yourself.
Oh, sorry, hit
You're
that there.
good.
Yeah, yeah. And if they went to Dayton, they absolutely belong in Dayton. So it's like can't really complain there if you're Arkansas in that situation. So yeah, horrible game all around. Shout out to South Carolina. They needed something to be excited about in 2025 and win a basketball game. But yeah, just no excuses from Kentucky or from Arkansas. That's Cal's certainly worst defeat as the Arkansas coach so far, and hopefully ever. So yeah, that's a tough one there. But yeah, and Seth Greenberg. Just as for that comment, I like Seth, but that is fundamentally wrong. That is incorrect. Cal took
His
UMass to a Final Four and took Memphis to a national championship, and his eight-seeded team in 2014 made the national championship. He coached an undefeated team. So this is, I mean, I don't know how you categorize like what is a good coaching job by him.
he's coaching one of the most expensive rosters in college basketball, and they are barely in the field.
Yeah, this is a team. They have talent, and they have, like they I understand the conference is as good as it is. So if you want to say like, oh my gosh, they're 6-10 in this gauntlet of a conference, yeah, like good on you. But if you don't make an NCAA tournament with this team, it is still a huge disappointment. So I don't think you can say it's like the best coaching job when like you're not far off from being like a disaster of a season kind of thing. Like it can't be your best coaching job when you're like within a few games of it being like a failure of a season kind of thing. So that does not make sense to me. So I do not agree with that.
Well, speaking of coaching jobs, somebody who hasn't really done a great coaching job at their current stop, but now is looking like he is solidly going to take his team into the dance is Mike Woodson. Indiana is solidly in field at this point, and probably enough from how that may have seemed a while back. They got a easy win at Washington yesterday, which like in theory should not be or was like an easy win, but we know with those road trips this year and everything, those can get tricky. But they went out to Washington, took care of business yesterday, and the Hoosiers are solidly in the field now, which I feel like it's flying under the radar that like they've already fired Mike Woodson and he continues to coach. And he's about to rally and get Indiana into the NCAA tournament. Wanted to make sure we talked about that because just improbable. Like it's reminiscent of the Long Beach State
Yes,
situation last
just a
year.
year ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Where a coach has already been fired and continued to, or was allowed to finish the season at his current stop. And that's what's happening with Mike Woodson. And now they've completely righted the ship. They've won 4 or 5. And like I said, wherever you look, they are solidly in the dance at this point. So, like, incredible turnaround and for Mike Woodson, and have to give him a lot of credit for where they were and his situation with his job to rally and get them poised to go dancing is uh astonishing. Like I don't think a lot of people. I mean, I remember we talked on here a while back and we looked at their remaining schedule and said we wouldn't be surprised if they lost out, and they've done anything but. And they did it yesterday with getting pretty much nothing from Balo again, which made it even more impressive. Yeah, a lot can be said, but yeah, a shocking turnaround for Indiana. And like I said, with a lot of credit to what they did in the non-conference too. They got some good wins there, and yeah, they are solidly in the dance at this point. So, uh, Mike Woodson's swan song not going how a lot of people thought it probably would have ended up.
Yeah, I not much to say there. I mean, just given where they started in the beginning of the season, really before that, they lose Lee McNeely. They had him pretty much signed, sealed, and delivered to Indiana. He he decommits, goes to UConn. And yeah, it's just kind of unclear what their team's going to look like. And then, they get Ballo. He's kind of a bust. And They had the 5-game skid in conference play. Pretty sure it got to a point where they were like losing 7 of 8 games, and now they're somehow like people were like, oh well, don't be surprised if Indiana makes himself a tournament team here and gets into the conversation, and somehow they've done enough to do that, and here we are, and they're probably going to be in the field. Um, yeah, it is a shocking development because the fan base seems as if they've moved on. They've just like, okay, like who's our next coach going to be? Like, let's start talking to Dusty May, and let's start like Dusty May had to publicly address the rumors of going to Indiana in the middle of their season, and he had to sign an extension because of the conversation surrounding the job, basically. So yeah, it's an impressive job by Woodson to get them to where they are, because it was not looking good. And yeah, give them a lot of credit. They're going to be in the tournament. They deserve to be there, I would say now. And yeah, there's not much else you can really say about it. It's a weird situation for Woodson, probably, where he's a lame duck coach, which is kind of rare in just the modern Power Five era in football and basketball, especially. So it's not a situation where he's coaching for his job. I don't know if like what would the scenario be that he would stay at Indiana? It doesn't sound like one exists. Yeah,
I
this
mean, if
could
they
be a
go to the
situation
Final
like
Four, it's like you
yeah,
can't
like
just
how
let him
far
walk
would they
out the
have to
door.
go for them to be like, well, actually, like you kind of saw this on a different scale with Kevin Keats last year, where NC State was pretty much all done with him, and they had that incredible ACC tournament run, and then they made the Final Four. So yeah, it's this is a much different scenario where he's already publicly said he won't be coming back. So yeah, it would be so Indiana, and it would be so fitting if they went deep enough into the tournament for people to be like, this makes no sense now. Like, not really sure what you're doing. Now, on the flip side, it would certainly be an attractive opening for someone if they were walking into a team that just made a Sweet 16, Final Four, Elite Eight type thing. But yeah, from a basketball standpoint, I still don't see this really changing much of the calculus for them. It's, if you look at them in any bracketology matchup, you're just kind of like, not so sure. Gonna lean Indiana in any of these games, but yeah, it's a fun story for sure. And give Woodson credit; he's been through a lot of shit with that fan base this year, and yeah, I mean, good on him. It's a cool story, and yeah, I wish I could. Some of the Indiana fans are just so annoying with this that they are now going from like maybe we can get Brad Stevens or Dusty May to now being like, well, wait a minute, Mike Woodson, we like not so fast. So yeah, good on them though. Yeah, so maybe Indiana fans can. I don't. I still think that's kind of necessary for them to be like, okay, what's the threshold that we actually start having conversations about like, do we actually want this guy to leave? Versus, or like, should fans be concerned if they go too deep into the tournament where they're in an NC State spot where they're just like, man, that Final Four run was awesome, but now we have to endure like 5 more years of Kevin Keats. So yeah, I'm not sure what that means for Indiana fans, but it's a lot of fun. It's a cool story, and yeah, it certainly is fun to watch how the Indiana fans are trying to both spin this as like a good thing and meaning like, no, 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 Woodson's still got to go. Like, if you do talk to anyone who really supports Indiana, they will tell you like, no, 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 this is wild, this is good, and they should be beating teams like Washington. It's still best for the program if Woodson leaves. So, wonder how far they can kind of take that. But yeah, it's the same thing with the Long Beach coach last year, except now it's on like a way bigger platform.
Well,
So
and does Woodson want to return though? Because remember, like at first they said retirement and kind of like made it like that. But like, is it like, does Woodson want to return, or like is he done?
I mean, he's old. I mean, Woodson's coached for years. Like he was in the NBA for years. You know, he's. I
I
always
mean,
thought the
coaching
college
Carmelo
players.
Anthony probably aged him like an extra 10 years.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, that whole
so.
ISO ball Knicks team probably did a number on him. But yeah, I don't know. I think he depends. I mean, if you're a college coach in today's time, you certainly have to really love what you do, and everything that comes with the job, especially being the coach at Indiana. It is Indiana's a weird job where it does have the same fan base as, not the same, but it is similar to what you have at Kentucky, and the expectations are so high, but just the kind of rationality of the fans is significantly different. Like Indiana holds themselves to the same standards as a Kentucky, but they're just simply not. Like, you know, the expectations for that program are different than they are for Indiana, and it's because, you know, you can make a Final Four at Kentucky, a national championship, and win national championships there. It's been done recently, this century. It has not been done at Indiana for decades. And, you know, John Rothstein has said before, like, Indiana probably just had one really great coach, and they've been riding that for years and years now. So
Well, and they had a great coach in Kelvin Sampson, and we know
they
how that
did.
ended up
Yeah.
there. Like,
So, yeah, they, you know, they're still kind of living in that, you know, Bob Knight reality type thing. So yeah, it's tough. And if they do get rid of Woodson, you know, I would be interested to know if it was like a mutual type thing, or if they were like, hey, it's time for you to retire type of thing. And if you were taking that job and you're just like, hey, this coach just was relieved of his duties after taking you loons all the way to a Sweet 16, you know, why would I want that job when just like a tournament appearance is enough for where I coach right now? Like Dusty May in Michigan, like that team hasn't been in the tournament for a few years, and they're thrilled to be in the position they're in now. So, whereas with Indiana, I don't know if they would celebrate like a season Michigan's had right now, because they'd be like, yeah, well, we got to show up in March type of thing. And that's still what matters most to that program, when they probably just need to recalibrate some of their expectations. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, very weird spot for Indiana to be in.
well, before we kind of start rolling through Saturday and more of the bubble results, I figured we should talk about the two big games today, and two teams we spent a lot of time talking about on our last podcast on Friday were Michigan State and Michigan, and they both had polar opposite outcomes in their games. But first, Michigan State continues to roll. They got a 71-62 win over Wisconsin at the Breslin Center today. Akins was awesome. Jace Richardson didn't have his best game, but he had some big shots, and Collard absolutely dominated on the boards for them. Uh, so yeah, big win for Michigan State. Wisconsin seems like they're sputtering a little bit, but Michigan State really on a roll, and impressive game for the Spartans and Tom Izzo getting them back rolling right at the right time. So yeah, they seem like they're in a good spot to take home the Big Ten regular season crown and be ready for March. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to what we talk about with Tennessee, where it's like now Tennessee can actually score, like they do have good guards, but Michigan State, like they're grinding teams down and playing like they held Wisconsin, who has had a great offense all year, and held them to 62 points today,
Yeah.
and really really controlled that game. And so yeah, it was an impressive win for Michigan State. Yeah, I mean they continue like Akins had 19 points. He wasn't the most efficient in this game. He was 6 for 18 from the field, but like they're getting what they need in these games, and it's like they don't shoot it well. Like that's been the case with them all year. That's been the case with them, like we said the other day, for the last 4 years, it seems. But they continue to win these games, and they continue. It seems like they're really separating themselves from the pack in the Big Ten at this point, especially with what we saw from Michigan today versus Illinois, with which we will get to. But that was none too impressive. But yeah,
Yeah.
big win for the Spartans and Tom Izzo there. So yeah, I think it's is. Do I want to say it? Fuck it, yeah, I'll say it. Who's like? I think Michigan State's a legit Final Four contender at this point. I was debating whether I actually want to give them that tag, but I will give it to them.
Yeah, I think you can because of the Izzo factor for sure. They, I mean, they do all the little things really well. For anyone that cares about that stuff, there's no stat for it, but like anyone who watches them, you just kind of in close games, they just kind of have that feeling of like somehow they're going to find a way to pull this game out of their ass, and they do every time just without fail. And yeah, I think they are extremely well disciplined, and they've defensively been at a different level than what they were at the start of the year. I think the version of them now is good enough to make a Final Four. And I do think because Izzo's the coach, I think that carries a lot of weight. And yeah, the defense is there, which is usually how these teams make Final Fours. But yeah, I'm excited to see what draw they get and how far they're going to go there because, this team, I would say, overachieved significantly in uh, Big Ten play and just, on the season. This was not supposed to be one of Izzo's better teams, and it has been. And yeah, you're kind of running out of things to say that, describe how they're playing. And yeah, I'm just excited to see how far they can take this because, it's been a while since Izzo's kind of had his day in NCAA tournament play. It's been many years now. It feels like 1,000 years ago they, were just there in 2019. But yeah, credit to them. That Wisconsin team has been putting it on people offensively, and today they just didn't. And you could see it coming in the second half. Every second half, the point differential for their last 3 games in the second half, they've won the second half of, I think, their last 5 games at a pretty decent margin.
Yeah, it's been
And today was no
staggering because
different.
like
Yeah,
Wisconsin was leading at half again in this game. They were up by 2 at halftime,
yeah.
but like you said, like you could kind of see it brewing before halftime, and then they just put it on them in the second half. And it's like they close games well, they defend well, like. And when you can go up against an offense like Wisconsin and really drag them down into your style of game, and like they're not knocking down anything, it's like if you can do that to Wisconsin, there's probably a lot of other teams they'll see in March that they're capable of doing. And obviously, like it's different when it's on a neutral floor and not at home. But
Hmm.
I mean, but yeah, they like very impressive performance for the Spartans today. And we asked that question a couple weeks ago of like who's the most likely Big Ten team to go on a Final Four run. Like, well, that was 11 days ago, and it's like my answer is completely different now than what it was then. Because I think it like I don't think either of us mentioned Michigan State then, and now I feel
No,
like Michigan
yeah,
State clearly be the answer to that question.
they should be. And they've earned that. And I think that, yeah, I had Wisconsin when we talked about it, and I still feel as if like, yeah, the reasoning's valid. This team scores at a level which the rest of kind of the high end teams in the conference can't really keep up with. Um, and yeah, I felt as if they had the best player. They had Tanji, and that was going to be enough to make them the most dangerous Big Ten team in postseason play. It's I
You're not
still
going to beat a lot of teams when Tanjay and John and Blackwell were a combined 2 for 15 from three
Yeah,
point line in
and
this game.
I don't think that many teams are capable of holding them to that, but Michigan State did, and yeah, it's been really fun to watch them just kind of take over these second halves, and the Izzo legend grows, and that's, I mean, every game they play in NCAA tournament play, with a few exceptions, they are going to have a huge advantage at head coach, and they're probably going to be in a situation where they're capable of defending any team that gets, you know, in their region or thrown at them there. So, the shooting is an issue. It might rear its head at some point, but these games they've played so well on defense that it hasn't had to yet. So, yeah, it's fun to watch. Just anytime like a Michigan State team gets hot, it's been fun to watch. So, yeah, this team, you got Seth Greenberg spewing that stuff about Cal. This would probably be Izzo's best coaching performance of the last 10 years, probably. He took that 2015 team as a 7 seed to the Final Four. That was really impressive coaching job. But this one, I think, just in terms of their body of work in the regular season, from where they started to where they are now, to where they are in a position where they are going to win a conference where they got 10 teams going into the tournament. It's a huge deal. And yeah, I think Izzo's just huge renaissance from him. And, he is one of the last of the old guard that we grew up with who's still doing it at a really high level, which is fun to watch.
Well, we were talking about Michigan State and teams that defend well, so I think that's a good transition to a team who doesn't defend anybody, and that's Michigan. And Illinois went on a 62-point rampage in the second half to
Unbelievable.
beat
Yeah.
Michigan by 20 in Ann Arbor. Um, and you said on Friday that you really wanted to see Michigan dominate a game and run a team off the court. And boy, that did not happen in this one
Yes,
at all.
that was
Um,
the opposite we got.
yeah, that I don't know. Golden was good, and nobody else was good for Michigan in
No.
this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, Illinois, like I said, went on a tear in the second, and that's been our concern with Michigan. It's like they don't defend well, they turn the ball over a lot. It's something we've talked about too, and it's just like it the defense reared its head, especially in the second half of this game. Anything like Illinois has not shot the ball well at all of late,
No, they
and for them
haven't.
to
They've been horrible.
yeah, and for them to go on a 62-point rampage in the second half of this game was wow. And there's after this game, I don't know, maybe it was just one bad game for Michigan, but I do not have a lot of confidence anymore in this Michigan team when Illinois can go into Ann Arbor on the road and just completely turn their whole season around and get their momentum back and dominate the second half of this game against Michigan the way they did. Uh, very, very poor performance for Michigan in this one. Um, yeah, that was rough. They were 4 of 18 from the 3 point line in this one. Uh, yeah, gave up 62 points in the second half. Not going to beat a lot of teams that way. Uh,
No.
so yeah, Michigan is sputtering big time after this one, and yeah, I don't like I said, maybe it was just one bad game, but this game did not instill confidence. I think I saw a tweet earlier that I think was a good approximation of where this Michigan team's at. They said whatever one sees Michigan on the 4 line in their region is going to be very happy.
Yeah, that, I mean, couldn't really agree more with that one. And yeah, I remember when we had Rob on and, just talked about like kind of how Michigan defends in some of these games defensively that they played, especially in the non-conference. They were not great defensively, and they were just torched by certain pick and roll action and by really athletic guards that seemed to be something they couldn't really keep up with. And yeah, I mean, Illinois today, um, Michigan had the idea going in, it seemed that they were going to run them off 3-point line as much as they could, which they did at times, except every time that they ran an Illinois shooter off 3-point line, Michigan just apparently forgot the concept of help defense, and whoever was just careening towards the basket with the ball for Illinois had like really easy reads and options that, and at times just wide open lanes to finish. And yeah, I mean, give Illinois credit. They made some just wild shots. They were banking in threes from the wing. They were feeling it offensively. But yeah, just defensively for Michigan, that was a shocking second half. I was texting with some of my friends. We're kind of like, this is this the time? Like, there were still times I thought that Michigan's just going to come back from this because that's just what they do every game. They're in this situation every game where they're like down 8 to 10 points with 12 minutes to go in the game, and then they somehow come back and pull it out of their ass. And today that was not the case. And in fact, when it got to those moments where it felt as if like, here comes Michigan, Illinois would just respond with 3-4 possessions of just wide open looks of some kind. And yeah, that's a huge concern. And it's going to be those really talented offensive teams that are going to be able to kind of pick them apart in those areas. Now, it certainly helps Illinois with shooting as well as what they were today. That's kind of not how they've been shooting recently, but just a really shocking defensive effort for Michigan in the second half. As you said, Golden was really the only one who looked worth his time. But yeah, a team with good guards is going to beat them. That's what's going to do them in. Those bigs are solid. Really love Wolf and Golden, but yeah, they turn the ball over way too much because of the lack of someone to really set up the offense. They sometimes the possessions are longer, and sometimes they get forced into turnovers that otherwise if they had a real point guard, they probably really wouldn't commit. So it is a little surprising that it was as bad as it was today. Because Illinois had, for all the shit we say about Michigan and how they've been, Illinois has just not been a good team over the course of some time now, especially like
I mean, they got
just
beat by
recently.
50 last
Yeah,
weekend.
like just seeing where they were a week ago and where they are now. I'm not really, if they shoot that way, then it's a different equation for them going forward. But I'm not ready to. I think that says more about kind of where Michigan is, and maybe some of these teams have kind of caught up to them. But yeah, I was just telling some of my friends today, like, I cannot wait to pick South Dakota State to beat Michigan or Drake to beat Michigan in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So they do have that kind of feel. I feel as if they'll be a really popular, like, yeah, watch out, Yale might beat this team or
There'll
any
be
of
some
those.
irony in that
Yeah,
with
really.
the
I know,
Danny
right?
Wolf
Yeah.
factor.
Yeah. So, yeah, I could 100% see them being knocked off pretty early. And yeah, I mean, the peak of Michigan might have peaked. And yeah, these teams might be figuring it out the longer some of the season goes on here with them. It's just more likely they get exposed. But I was just thinking, after watching Gonzaga, Gonzaga would probably, like, if they played the same type of defense that Illinois played on them today, Gonzaga might put up like 100 points on them. They just have that, Ryan Nemhart would take that team apart. So yeah, the potential for Michigan to be eliminated in the first round of the NCAA tournament is much clearer and much, I think, more likely now than what it's been in a while, because this was a game that we talked about a couple of days ago where, yeah, you hope that this is a game that Michigan beats a team by more than 4. Like, Illinois was kind of sputtering themselves and the opposite happened. So, yeah, I'm curious to see where this puts Michigan. Obviously, we could be having a very different conversation if they beat Michigan State at the Breslin Center. So, could be a little different, but
I
it's
do
this
not
one's.
think that's going to happen.
I don't think that's going to
Yeah.
happen either, especially after how both those teams looked, how they did today. So yeah, I think it's it's one of those things where I still think this is a successful season for Dusty May. I don't know if like anything is going to change that per se. But yeah, I mean, today was hugely just a letdown for a team that you're looking at like, is this team underrated? Could this team really go further than, the first weekend of the tournament? And I think after today, the answer is just a resounding no. Like, unless Arkansas is your first round opponent, it's going to be a tough one for them to get by
Let's
that first
see.
game there. So
I've been referencing the palm bracket the whole show. Let me see who he has them. So he still has them as a 3 seed. He has them facing Northern Colorado in the first round, but then the
and
second
Northern
round.
Colorado's no joke. They they are a legit squad. So I would not
So if
be totally shocked if they won the Big Sky, and that would be a tough matchup for Michigan.
so if they got past that, their second round game would be against either Memphis or the winner of Xavier Baylor in Dayton.
I don't think they're beating any of those teams. I don't.
Any of those three, no,
I
I'd
don't
take
think
any
so.
of those three over
Those teams
Michigan.
have they have real guards, and yeah, they would probably outscore them.
Um, yeah, so Michigan's got issues. Well, another team that has it, I'll start ripping through Saturday a little bit more, but the first Saturday game story mainly I want to talk about is I think Bill Self has a full blown mess on his hands at Kansas at this point. So they lose a tough one to Texas Tech. They lose again in the phog, which just never happens. Now has happened multiple times this year. Um, yeah, not looking good for the Jayhawks, but mainly the bigger story from the game was Zeke Mayo's tweet where he was getting a lot of nasty, just racist, like disgusting things sent to him in his DMs, and he posted about it. And Bill Self releases a statement, uh, I guess, in response to that. And what was weird about it to me is like Bill Self did not like stand up for Zeke Mayo like in that statement, which is like if you're going to put out the statement, which is obviously probably like that, like what Zeke Mayo said led to it. Like, why are you not going to back your player in that? And he's just talking about like it was a tough loss, and we're looking forward to our next 2 games. And he never at any point like backed Zeke Mayo in that statement, or like even made a response to just like the horrible things people were saying to him. So just for that to happen after a tough loss at home, and just a bad look for Bill Self in general to not like back his guy, I thought, in that statement. Like if you're going to release a statement, you should probably address the fact of what these people were saying to your guy, and to not include that in a state. I don't know. Kansas, like I said, they've got a full blown fucking mess on their hands at this point.
Yeah, I think they have something of a big picture issue of sorts. The transfer portal has not been great to Bill Self in the NIL era. They hit it with Remy Martin when they won the national championship, but recently, I I think they need to get more basketball ops people in that building, and just really get together on how they're building a team, because some of these parts do not work. I feel as if they just like saw like a big board of transfers and were like, "Ooh, yeah, like let's get AJ Store and see what he can bring." And like Hunter Dickinson's the best like transfer on the market here. Let's go get him. And yeah, I think that they have some issues on that front. And that was a gutsy win for Texas Tech. That should be the main story. That is impressive. Any team that goes on the road in there, and they were not favored.
Yeah, 4.5
Going there
point
and win.
dogs.
which is crazy. But yeah, the statement itself was weird. That I have never seen that. I've never seen a coach put out a statement in regards to a regular season game that they lost. I've never seen that before. And I've never seen a statement be made and then the statement be about like when Marcus Smart shoved the fan when he was at Oklahoma State, and the chair incident at Kansas.
Yeah.
Those were statements like, okay, let's make a statement on this. And this did not the statement was about the game, and it was not like, for those who did not watch, it was not like the Houston game they lost was cataclysmically disgraceful on every level. They should never have lost. And yeah, the Texas Tech beat them. They were the better team. And yeah, that did not require a statement. And then on the Zeke Mayo stuff, he kind of I saw the statement where he was just kind of like, yeah, the criticism should be directed my way. It shouldn't be at the players or anything else. Like, it is a very weird way of being like, hey, don't dox the players for playing
To not
not well.
mention Zeke Mayo by name
Yeah,
at
I
all in that
probably would
statement.
have now, and these guys are basketball coaches. They're not PR experts, as we know. Some are much better than others at this.
But there are PR experts in the building.
There should be, and
Yeah.
I cannot believe that this statement was okayed to be put out there. And I didn't see the exact timing or the timestamps of it. I don't know if the Zeke Mayo stuff came out before or after the statement.
Because the Zeke Mayo stuff, I think Zeke tweeted that last night, and then Bill Self put out the statement this morning.
Yeah. So
yeah,
it's a weird scenario for sure. I don't know if he was trying to make a blanket statement, like, hey, don't say anything about don't drag the players for this stuff. Like, I'm a man, I'm 40 kind of thing. But yeah, I have not seen that either, where they just were not like, hey, by the way, we totally condemn any derogatory things, racist things, doxing, threats, anything that you might say to any of the players, such as what was said about Zeke Mayo here. And yeah, I don't know. That was a weird one. Not really sure why they thought that was necessary, besides just being like, yeah, we totally wholly condemn any of these statements made to our players. And I would have probably started there, but yeah, that was a weird one for sure. And you see, Seth Davis, who's just as good as they come, one of the great college basketball reporters and writers that we've had. I'm a big fan of Seth, big fan. All the other stuff aside there, but Seth's been, and he's just yeah, I've never seen this. I have never in my life seen this kind of statement released after a game. And yeah, it's really strange. And it's very strange that they did not really back Zeke Mayo by name or really mention that. And I didn't really see any, not that it really matters at the end of the day, but you didn't really see any Kansas players kind of, coming out to, support him much either. And I haven't really been on the Kansas player Twitter wave, so I could be very wrong about that. But yeah, the statement itself, either that's one that you you don't make a statement, or you have to just come out and condemn that behavior as a whole.
Like you said, I'm not on the Kansas player Twitter, but I know Dickinson wants to come out and make a tweet and make a podcast and whatever about everything. And to my knowledge, he hasn't said anything about this, and he's supposed to be the captain and the leader of this team. And it's okay, so Bill Self put out a poor statement about this. Where are you? To my knowledge, Dickinson hasn't said anything about it. So where is he on this?
It's one of those things. I just don't know why a statement is necessary. And kind of to bring back the SEC, this happens weekly. in the conference. Like, it happens all the time. Like, every single week, this happens where, especially in football, like, a kicker misses a kick, somebody drops the ball. Like, whoever the poor punt returner was for Auburn when Bama beat him, on that
Coy
horrible, like,
Moore.
yeah. And could you imagine what that guy got in his?
Well,
Now,
yeah,
granted,
like
it's an
prime
issue
example.
because Zeke Mayo made it public. So I understand on that range, he made it public, and at that point, it might become on the head coach to, release a statement and condemn the behavior and everything else. But yeah,
It's
just
like
a really weirdly worded statement to put out.
when Chad Baker Mazzara got tossed from
Got
the Yale
ejected,
game
yeah.
last year. Yeah, and like Bruce Pearl, like, and I'm like Chad didn't publicize like anything, but like people were probably saying horrible things to him about that, and like Bruce Pearl came out after that, and like he had Chad's back, and was like, yeah, he made a mistake here, but like he's my guy, and like he's an Auburn man, and like I'll always have his back, and like Bruce did like mention Chad by name like after that game, and after him was like had his back publicly, and like that was without Chad even like making a post like Zeke Mayo did or anything, because Bruce just knew that's probably what was coming Chad's way.
Yeah, probably. And Bruce gets his own fair share of it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, really, I mean, it just kind of continues. It's a weird season for Kansas, and it's never a dull moment there. It seems to just keep getting weirder there.
Yeah, but the game itself, like credit to Texas Tech for going on the road there and getting a win. Like we haven't mentioned them much, but yeah, they did an awesome job. Did what they needed to do, and also like overcame what was an awesome performance by KJ Adams, which is
Yes,
obviously
yeah, it was his best game of the
overshadowed in that
year.
one. But he was awesome in that game.
Yeah,
Jacob or fucking I always say JT Toppin. Like I always fucking say Jacob, but yeah,
yeah.
JT Toppin was awesome
Jacob
in that
Toppin,
game.
Obi Toppin, yeah.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Yeah. Credit to Texas Tech for that one, and good response after that Houston loss earlier this week. Like they bounced back and didn't let it compound and went on the road and got a big one. So yeah, Texas Tech is going to be a dangerous team in March.
For sure. Yeah.
I think they're another very under the radar team that maybe isn't getting the hype to go on a run like they should be. But Texas Tech is going to be a dangerous team in the tournament.
Yeah, Texas Tech has a super high ceiling. The way they're built and the way they defend, they should. I mean, I would have them going pretty far, like Elite Eight level, kind of far. The scoring and shooting could be an issue. Houston exposed that really badly when they played them, but not everyone defends how Houston defends. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I am a huge fan of McCaslin and just that Texas Tech team. So good win by them.
Well, we can start bouncing around to like I'll just start bouncing around through Saturday, and then obviously some bubble games. And the Arizona Iowa State game was a big one, so we'll hit that too for sure. But which not much to talk about. Iowa State dominated there, so I don't. But yeah, we'll hit that. But I'll start rolling through Saturday, and we could just you can just jump in as you want to if you want to hit more on any of these games. But first game I wanted to mention because it was an early game. You said the other day you really like same as what we said about Michigan. You wanted to see Maryland really like dominate a team and take
And they
over.
did
They didn't.
not.
Yeah, they won at Penn State, but they definitely did not dominate that
Yeah.
game. So I don't know where your concern level on that team is because they didn't do the mission that you set out for them to do the other day.
Yeah, certainly challenge them to crush someone else. And this is a Penn State team that is barely or might not qualify for the Big Ten tournament, which is a thing now that I don't think enough people know. Because a
Yeah.
lot of Penn State people, I know they're like, we'll see if we can go on a run in the Big Ten tournament. It's like, you got to get there
Well,
first here. And it's the same thing with USC fans and They're just like, Muscle will take us far. I was like,
I
as
mean,
of
I
now,
mentioned it.
you're not going anywhere. Like,
I mentioned it with Rutgers the other day because
yeah,
like Rutgers is in danger of missing too. Like this could be the end of Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey's college career this week.
yeah. So
If
weird times there, but yeah. Overall, I'm still not in a panic mode with Maryland. Certainly not the same way in Michigan. But yeah, that was not a performance they should try and replicate in the future because a better team than Penn State would have beaten them probably by 8 to 10.
UConn dominated against Providence, your Huskies. They got the job done, like you mentioned. That's usually a rowdy place. I thought Providence might be competitive in that one, but UConn took care of business there. So I'll give you your Husky second if there's anything more you want to say on that one, but I don't think there's too much to talk about there.
Nothing really
I
to
didn't
add
see
on
any
that one.
crazy Dan Hurley clips coming out of there. So
Yeah. Well, the real crazy ones was Andrea Hurley, his wife, was talking to the Field of 68 guys and just spouting off how much she hates Providence and all the Providence fans.
I
And
did not see that.
yeah, how like she really gave it to Doster when they were talking. And I was like, my gosh, this will go over really well. But yeah, Providence kicked multiple fans out of the game. So exciting stuff there for Providence fans. They're having not a good season there, but yeah, all things considered, business trip for UConn. Yeah, just that's a game they not a very good team. So
One that
no
was
surprise there.
one yesterday that was an absolute backbreaker is Oklahoma. They had a chance to get a huge road win at Ole Miss and really solidify
Yeah.
themselves. Yeah, they did not. Yeah, that was a real backbreaker for Oklahoma. They're for whatever reason, like I'm to the point where it's like they should be out, and I'm tired of talking about them and hearing about them. I believe they were still Lenardi's last team in as of today, which he had Oklahoma in and Xavier out, which Xavier got a huge win yesterday against
Yeah.
Creighton. Dominated that. Like they really took care of business. They had to have that. They had to have that one. Uh, Oklahoma lost one that they had to have. That could have been a season-changing win for them, and they fell short. Fears was awful in this game.
Terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. That was like I said, that was a real backbreaker for Porter Moser in Oklahoma. That would have been a huge one for them to get. Padula was out of his mind for Ole Miss. Um, yeah, just real tough loss for Oklahoma, and they're going to have a good week this week because if they don't win at least one of these, probably two of these this week, and probably need to win one in the SEC tournament. I don't. They got to be the worst team, like as far as their performance in a conference that I've ever seen around the bubble.
They have won 4 games in the year 2025. So that's just not going to be good enough. Yeah, the number 4. You can count on one hand the amount of games they have won in 2025. So not good enough. And we have that discussion before. Like they are going to need to now probably, because they had that Ole Miss game for the taking. They're now probably in a spot where they have to beat Missouri, and I don't see that happening. But and they're going to have to win one or more SEC tournament games. But it's still in a spot like if they do not win any of their remaining games here, is this a spot where you're like, how can we credibly put a team that has won 4 conference games in the tournament? Like,
And the
I
answer
don't.
should be you can.
Yeah, like I mean, it's to a different discussion, but we had this debate multiple times with the college football playoff. Like, you can't put in this. They lost 3 games. Like, we don't care who
Yeah.
you beat. You lost 3 games. So, it's that same kind of discussion, just on a different level. Like, you won 4 games in that conference. It's not good enough. And while some of their wins are not bad in conference, they just have to like got to pick off one of these teams that's going to be like in the top 8 seats in
I
tournament
just
play. They haven't done that.
I know the criteria. It is like it is what it is. We're looking at the resumes and all, but like this should just be like an eye test one where you can just watch Oklahoma and look at their performance for the last 3 months and just be like, this is not a good basketball team. Like
Yeah,
nobody
and
wants to see them in the tournament. Like these teams that are out behind them are better teams than them.
yeah, I mean, and we had the discussion when we were most recently on where we're like, how do we judge those games that they won in the non-conference, and how do we judge them, now? Because those teams might be different, and among the biggest ones, you know, yeah, Michigan beating Michigan might be impressive, but you right now stink and have not beaten anyone. And I understand the conference is a gauntlet, but you just have to do 4 conference wins. I don't think that's ever happened. I would have to look up if that has ever been discussed, putting a team in an at-large spot where they are that bad in conference play. It kind of used to be like, wow, this team's under 500 in conference play. Is this a team that we think should be in the field? And
Remember, a lot of people were pissed about Michigan State last year.
yeah,
Like,
and and this is a much more egregious case, if you will. There's just really no explanation for this one. And it's unlikely unless they do win the remaining 2 games here. Yeah, if a big gets stolen or anything, it's a wrap. They're not getting it. So yeah, it's a shame because they started really well. I think they started 13-0, and here they are.
they were
So
undefeated entering SEC play.
yeah, and
I believe I saw on Twitter too. They were, and I didn't fact check this, so if it's wrong, it's wrong. But I saw they were 362nd in non-conference strength of schedule, which I know they played some good teams in the non-conference. So, like I said, I'd have to fact check that
they
because
have
it didn't
yeah.
sound right. But
I don't. I mean, that would be crazy if that were true because they do have some pretty decent wins, non-conference for sure. But yeah, I don't. I mean, as for the game, they have those tough games, and then they have their throwaway games. If you see Valley's non-conference schedule, those teams are not Division One who they beat, and that kind of thing. I don't know if Oklahoma beat anyone of that variety or scheduled anyone of that variety, but I would have to check. I'd be curious to know how bad some of their like initial non-conference games were, the ones
I
that
don't know.
they just kind of start off playing.
Let's take a look. I'll pull it up while we're talking. We can check that out real quick.
So, yeah, I think it would be a huge disappointment for Oklahoma if they didn't make the tournament, given what they did going into conference play. They just totally just fell apart. And in some of these games against some of the better teams in the conference, they just got absolutely dump trucked. They got hammered.
Okay,
So,
they beat Lindenwood, Northwestern State, Stetson, East Texas A&M. They beat Providence by 2. They beat Georgia Tech, Alcorn State, Oklahoma State, Central Arkansas, Prairie View.
okay, so there are some terrible teams they have beaten in there. I mean, Stetson's won 8 games. Prairie View's horrible. Yeah, some of those are, Central Arkansas has won 8 games. Just very unimpressive games that they've scheduled there, but
Yeah,
which would
but
be a shame because I don't, I don't know what you would call the Porter Moser era right now at Oklahoma. But for me personally, I had higher expectations for him and for what they were going to be this year. So if they didn't make the tournament, that'd be pretty rough for them.
I'm gonna sound like a non-ball knower too, because I don't remember. But was he the coach of the Final Four team, or did that predate him?
No, so yeah, when they made Final Four in 2016, that was Buddy Hield. Lon Kruger was the coach, and then
That's
Porter was the coach at Loyola when they went to the Final Four in 2018.
Gotcha.
So yeah, their
That's
Final
right.
Four team in 2018, and then they were
I knew I was going to sound like a non-ball knower. I was just blanking
yeah.
on it.
So and then they were a Sweet 16 team in 2021. They beat Illinois when they were 1 seed. That was like Cameron Krutwig, and yeah, he had some good runs at Loyola. So I know he was hired with like pretty big expectations at Oklahoma. The fit's a little weird. Like he's not. I think he would be a better fit for Indiana than like what he is at Oklahoma right now. But yeah, Oklahoma's in a pretty odd scenario when it comes to their like major sport head coaches. Like Venables is kind of in that like coaching for his job mode now. And then I don't know how much farther Porter Moser is behind, but yeah, I would say it has not been to the level where they want it to be with him right now. So I think he's a great coach. I think he's awesome. But I wonder if pressure will get ratcheted up here soon.
Um, well, I'm rolling through the day. I just wanted to mention this real quick as I was looking through the games. I saw Omaha's win that clinched the Summit League title. But did you see I believe it's the
Yes,
AD there coming out of the trash can with the
incredible.
AEW belt.
It's like, what is that?
And it was an AEW belt of just
Yeah,
like to cap it off of all things. Like,
yes. And I know you have not had the most betting success on Omaha this year, so I
oh my
was like,
god,
yeah,
yeah.
it's like, man, this is incredible by them there. So
Did you see, by the way, like, I guess that's their whole thing, like, where they, like, smash a trash can after every
yes,
game they win? Like, they were in the locker room and they have, like, a little bathroom trash can and they're all just like, yeah, fucking
yeah, I
destroying
was like,
it.
is this an Astros joke or something? Like, I was really confused when I first saw it, but yeah, all yeah, they're having fun there. So we'll see if that translates into an NCAA tournament appearance. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, the Summit League does not have a fucking quadruple bye bracket. They're just
No, they
straight
do
up.
not. The Summit
Yeah.
makes you earn it. I do think South Dakota State will win that tournament, but that is, if anyone is looking for like games where the over is going to hit, look no further than that tournament and that conference
Yeah.
because all of those teams they are just like run and gun through and through. So that'll be a fun tournament.
So St. John's wasn't quite as dominant as we thought they were going to be, but
Yeah,
they clinched the outright Big East title. I did have St. John's minus 20. That fell a little bit short, but
yeah. The
I think
whiteout
it.
was a success, but at the same, yeah, I don't know if that was like a like Seton Hall, Kadari Richmond revenge game kind of thing. But yeah, they showed up, um, gave it, you made it like relatively close. Certainly, like cut the spread in half. But yeah, so still a successful win for the whiteout suit game lives on as a success.
Um, Continuing to roll through the day, another one to hit on. Fucking Colorado State beat the shit out of Utah State. Did
Yes,
not
that
see that one
was
coming.
that was a surprise. Yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised if Colorado State like beat them in a close one. But yeah, for
Yeah,
like Utah State
Colorado State
is.
was favored in that game, but
Yes, yeah. So it's not like a huge surprise per se that they won that game, but yeah, just like took them behind the woodshed. That was a drubbing.
yeah, I mentioned earlier Xavier really beat the shit out of Creighton
Yeah,
and got
did
a win they
exactly what
needed
they
bad
needed
for
to
the
do.
bubble.
Yeah,
Xavier should be in now.
they should
Uh,
be in, and I do
they've been
think
hot. I'm like,
that's yeah, and that's an argument that people had for some time between if it were between them and Oklahoma, they were just like you have to look at the conference record here, and like a Xavier team that is a decent Big East team cannot be left out over this Oklahoma team that cannot beat anyone. Like when they're tasked with playing a good team in conference, they haven't beat them. So yeah, that's exactly what Xavier needs to do. I would be
Conwell and Fremantle were awesome in this game.
yeah, I would be very surprised if they were excluded from the field. So
I think
they
Xavier might win the Big East tournament and just get themselves in
mm,
completely. Like I think they are. I don't even know if they'd be a bid stealer. I guess they're fringe bid stealer range, but like
yeah,
I
I don't
think
think they
Xavier's
would
good enough
be.
to win that
They,
tournament.
they are yeah. All those teams. I mean, yeah, like St. John's has been the best team from start to finish this year in the conference, but really any of those teams can beat anyone. And I say any of those teams, I mean like 5 of the teams. So yeah, I think it's more or less like you just have to eliminate the teams that you don't think can win it, like your DePauls, Georgetowns, those types of teams, Seton Hall. So yeah, I that's usually a really fun competitive tournament. It really doesn't heat up until like the semifinal usually, because at times in the Big East it's like the top 4 and then like whoever else is there. But say this is probably the deepest it's been for a couple of years now. It wasn't particularly deep last year. Um, so yeah, I mean, I could definitely see the team that you would have to worry about stealing a bit is Villanova. They would be the one who, if they can get hot, they've played every team in the conference either really tough or beaten them. Eric Dixon is the nation's leading scorer, so yeah, I think that would be the team that would be a bid stealer because they are not in the discussion, I would say, for an at large. So yeah,
The
they would be the
Crown
team
might
you have
lose
to
their
watch
number
out for.
one
Yes,
seed.
the Crown might lose a number 1 seed if Villanova were to really make a run and win the Big East tournament there. So
Um, Another quick shout out I wanted to give as I'm scrolling. Central Connecticut clinched the NEC
the
regular
NEC,
season.
yep,
That's another league tournament that's going to be wide open, but quite the turnaround there. I believe I saw earlier they won one game 2 years ago.
yes, they did, yeah,
Um, yeah, and now they have clinched the NEC regular season. So that's another league tournament where
yeah.
no crazy buys in that one or anything. So
Those
that one's going to be
teams
wide
can
open.
already like all of those teams are playing for Dayton spots. That NEC
Yeah.
winner is almost certainly going to be in Dayton, and yeah, so that's what they're playing for, and that tournament is totally wide open. That's a crapshoot. So the gap between those teams is usually pretty small. So
Is
yeah,
Spike
Central
Lee going to
Connecticut,
be at
great.
the NEC tournament?
I don't think so. Though that's a higher seed host tournament, so I would be
Well, LI
surprised if
used to
he.
too. So
Yeah, that's fair. He could get back there. But yeah, I don't see Spike as going to those games, but we'll see. Who knows?
so
He's already been there once before, but
so
yeah,
make sure you download NEC Front Row
of
to
course,
watch
yeah,
that tournament this week.
absolutely, yep,
Um, so yeah, we'll keep an eye on that one. Probably not keep an eye on it, but yeah, in theory,
well, you
keep an
might,
eye on it.
being an Auburn fan, you can keep an eye on whoever you might see as cannon fodder in the first game. So,
Yeah, shit. Let me look. I've been referencing the Palm bracket all day. Let me see who we're projected to be playing as of now. Um, let's see. It would be the winner of Bucknell and Southern,
oh my gosh,
according to Palm.
I didn't think so.
Uh,
Yeah, Bucknell's second right now in the Bucknell or Patriot League going into that tournament. American, I think, won the regular season, but um, yeah, that's another one. Patriots going to be a 15 seed probably.
um, let's see. We had Vanderbilt got an overtime win against Missouri.
Shocking
Memorial.
decision by Dennis Gates not to foul up 3, and they just totally backfired, and yeah,
Oh
it
my
cost them in
god!
that game.
You saying that made me think. By the way, did you see Doug? His reply to Rothstein earlier. He was like, so Rothstein was like, always tweet his typical like always foul up 3, and
Yeah.
like Doug was like, we fouled up 3 and lost yesterday. There's no foolproof plan. Like nothing always works. And everybody was like in the replies like that might just be because you suck. Like,
Yeah, they that was like it made no sense at the time, and like Vanderbilt got a really clean type of look. They had like doubled a guy like careening in through to the lane, had a layup, and then pass it out for a 3. I was like, why don't you just give up the layup or foul? Like I don't understand. So yeah, it was a situation where once Vanderbilt forced overtime, they were not going to look back. So not
hell
a
of a
great loss. Yeah.
hell of a coaching job by Byington this year. They've
Yes,
gotten a
that's
lot of
huge.
big
Yeah.
wins. Like
Yeah.
they will be dancing. They'll probably be an 8-9 seed,
Yeah.
I imagine.
And he has experience like winning in those scenarios before at JMU, and yeah, Vanderbilt's been a sleeping giant for years in college basketball. So seems as if they got the right coach now. So good on
I
them.
think I think we can finally dismiss the SMU
Oh my
at
gosh,
large
yeah, Stanford
discussions.
got that win,
Thank God.
and yeah, we can put that one down now. That I do not think SMU will be getting. I think they're fourth in the ACC, which just speaks to what the ACC is this year.
The Mountain
So
West is going to get more teams than the
I know,
ACC
right?
again.
Yeah. So yeah, they're just going to get shellacked by Duke when they see him. So good
Um,
season by SMU. Andy Enfield, year one there. So just schedule some real out of conference games next time and beat some of these teams so
win
we can
one
end this
quad
discussion.
one
Yeah,
game
like
one.
literally any of them. So yeah, got your work cut out for you next year there. So
Let's see. Uh, uh, Speaking of bubble, and all, we mentioned the Mountain West. Boise State avoided absolute disaster yesterday
I feel
and
them bad.
held on to beat Fresno, so they're still holding on to an at large. But that could have been the end of the road for Boise real quick if they lost to Fresno State there, because Fresno State is god awful. I'm sure
Yeah,
Jason Lockenfora probably gave out Fresno State to
of course.
cover.
Yeah, he gave a like Fresno State plus 30.5 or whatever they were, something crazy like plus 1,500 money line.
Yeah. Yeah, but luckily for goddamn Boise, they held on to it. So they will be okay. I was sorry, my thing was lagging out. I'm trying to just bounce through these. But okay, Duke dominated again against Florida State. No issues. Cooper Flag didn't have his best game though, but still reassumed the National Player of the Year lead. I'm glad he didn't have too good of a game yesterday, where Broom is still within striking distances. And we were mentioning earlier, like if you're Auburn, like how much these last two games matter and all that. Like that's still freaking huge. The
I
last
mean,
two
I
games
think,
for
yeah, I think those odds are also like due to Janai not being great in a big spot on national TV and everything. I think that has something to do with it. Um, but
well,
yeah,
luckily the last 12 minutes were not seen on national TV,
yeah,
so
yeah.
maybe that helped
Well,
his case.
you're just gonna have to like hope Hubert Davis like institutes like a triple team on Cooper Flag when they play him.
Speak, Speaking of which, I get game day always goes to UNC Duke, but what the fuck are we doing?
Well, not only
Uh,
that, I mean, you have like ACC Network is tweeting like no one's hotter than North Carolina right now. They've won their last 5 games. And they played no one. They have not played a team that has like a positive net rating like the last 30 days or anything. Like, yeah, so that annoyed me to no end. I was like, are we really going to do this? Like, and some of these people still have UNC in the field. It's like, how is this possible? Like, are we really going to give them like, yep, well, after beating Florida State by 10, I've seen enough. They're an NCAA tournament team. Like, no, absolutely not. That is, and I hate to pull this card, but I do think if Oklahoma were in the ACC or if South Carolina were in the ACC, they might be a bubble team. I think it's just like the conference is so bad this year, and yeah, that annoys me to no end that we're still having this conversation. I was like, how have you not seen enough that they're just not an NCAA tournament team? I'm sorry. It's just so yeah, that is very frustrating. And like Dan Wolken had tweeted out just people talking about that rivalry and everything, and he had made a point that I usually am not always agreeing with Dan Wolken, but he had said like, yeah, that rivalry is just outdated now. It's no longer like as relevant as what it used to be because like Coach K and Roy are gone, and it just like it's just not the same.
Is Auburn and Alabama not objectively a better college basketball rivalry than Duke, North Carolina at this point?
I would say to people like us, yeah. But I would say to like more of the casual fan, I still think they would need to be talked out of Duke, Carolina being a bigger one because that's like all they know. And they're like, oh, that's the biggest rivalry in the sport. And like, yeah, it was. Like, just recently it was. And it still might be to some people, but like, just in terms of basketball, like, it's not right now. And it's, some of those teams are not holding up their end. And, it was only 3 years ago that they played, a Final Four game. And now I would say ever since then, like, the same kind of I don't know what you call it, intensity of that rivalry hasn't really been there. Like John Shire and Hubert Davis, just as coaches, do not really bring it out of people as much. And at Duke, it's a new, like, an entire new roster every year. So yeah, I don't know. It's a little harder without Coach K and without Roy. The stakes just don't feel that high for the rivalry as much.
Well, that's the thing with
So
Alabama and Auburn. You got Bruce Pearl and Nate Oates,
and
who
Nate Oates,
are
yeah,
two of the best coaches in the sport, who are two like big personalities
they
that
are.
pull
Yeah, they're
people
just
in.
titans of
Like,
the sport right now. They're huge, like they're just really really big time, and they've carved out their own types of personalities. And like I guess the best way to describe it is like people have opinions on Bruce Pearl and Nate Oates. Like no one really has an opinion one way or another. They're not really polarizing. They don't really generate a lot of conversation. I think John Shire is a really good basketball coach, but I don't think he holds the same kind of, like he'll always be until he wins at a really high level, like, oh, well, he's the guy who replaced Coach K. And like Hubert kind of to that same degree has that as well. So yeah, but like everyone has an opinion on Nate Oates and Bruce Pearl. And it's not always for the best reasons, but they certainly have them, and like they generate discussion, and they're entertaining to watch, coach a game, and they have identities. Like I don't know what the identity of a Hubert Davis coach team is. Like
well,
I,
not apparently to ESPN.
yeah, like I don't really know what the like. John Shire's still kind of figuring it out, but I think John Shire's done like a really good job this year. But yeah, it's not the same type of rivalry as what it used to be. I don't know if the institution of the rivalry is big enough to kind of be bigger than Coach K or Roy Williams or Dean Smith. So we'll see. But that's just a rivalry that's just at its best when both those teams are really good. And gosh, like ESPN better hope that like North Carolina beats them, because otherwise I'll just be like, what are you doing? Like I cannot believe we're still doing this.
And they better hope Auburn, Alabama's like not any good.
Yeah, like, ugh, which we know
Oh,
won't be. So yeah,
yeah. So let's see, rolling through. The Bears. I don't know if you want your second to talk about the Bears. The Bears got
unbelievable. The Bears allowed.
huge,
I mean, this
huge win over
huge.
Oklahoma State.
It's huge, enormous win over Oklahoma State. Not only did the Bears need to have that game to solidify their spot in the field, but they took care of business. Oklahoma State did cover, which is not ideal because Oklahoma State is pretty bad. But yeah, they covered the 12 and a half. But man, just a huge, huge win for the Bears. They had to have it. And just as Juve is ready to quit all sports with the Bears, they bring him back in with a big time win against Oklahoma State. So,
Hey, Auburn got a big baseball win over them today, though.
yeah, and that's not good because Auburn baseball was not very good last year. So,
Hey, top
yeah,
25
really,
though. We're
yeah,
number
really not
25 right
good
now.
there for the Bears. But the Bears finished the season at Houston on Saturday. So
That'll go well.
not sure, or no, they host Houston actually because they already went to Houston. So
Oh.
yeah, they host Houston. So see how that goes. But yeah, the way Houston's playing right now, good luck. So Yeah,
Um,
Bears are staring down any kind of seeding from 7 to 10, I would say. So that's what they're looking at. So,
well, Palm still has them in Dayton, so
well, I would probably have them comfortably in the field by now. So we'll see. But I don't know if
two
Juve could handle Dayton.
two big games. By like, I don't think there's a lot to talk about in either of these two games because we've already did enough deep dives. But two like big matchups that ended up not being very competitive were Florida blowing out Texas A&M and Iowa State blowing out Arizona. Just for the sake of time, since we've already been going for a while, I kind of left these off like the big breakdown point and figured I'd just bring them up here because I don't know if there's a ton to talk about. But yeah, Florida took care of business. A&M seems like they're a team that's skidding at the wrong time, and Iowa State, on the other hand, they took care of Arizona, and Iowa State seems like after a few weeks of questions, they're really starting to get it together and get healthy at the right time too. So you got much you want to talk about in either of those two?
Yeah, no, nothing really surprising in those results. I do think the margin of victory, I thought that was going to be around like a 10 to 12 point game. Florida beating A&M, but they just stomped them. So yeah, not particularly shocked at that one, and really not shocked with Iowa State beating Arizona at home. They're trying to, I think, just get healthy at the right time here. But yeah, that's just kind of one of those games that you see Arizona, whether it's going to Houston, going to Iowa State, you just kind of know like, yeah, this game's not gonna go great for them, kind of thing. So it's a good matchup for Iowa State. They match up pretty well with Arizona, but yeah,
Uh,
nothing
just
nothing
want
really surprising there.
just want to point out 2 for 15 from the field for Caleb Love.
Goodness gracious, the reigning Pac-12 Player of the Year. So yeah, that's but yeah, that of course that Iowa State defense is going to eat him up every time. Same with Houston.
Remember, he
So
would easily be the best player in the SEC.
oh,
In this
easily, yes,
easily,
easily. Yeah, Juve is very high on Caleb Love. So
easily would be the
the man
best player in
retired
the
Coach K.
SEC.
Yeah, so that's what he's got going for him still.
Big game for the bubble yesterday was Georgia, Texas, and Georgia dominated, went into Austin
Hmm.
there. Big win for Mike White and the Dogs. They did what they needed to do, and now they should be in. I guess that'll depend on where you look as well, but that probably, that those were two teams that were hanging right around either
Yes,
side you
yeah,
look, and
both
that was
them were bubble
probably
teams.
enough.
Yeah,
Especially Georgia getting that win on the road, that's probably enough to put Georgia in and Texas out
yeah,
depending where you look. But huge win for the Dogs and Mike White in that one. So that's not an ironically huge one. That actually was a huge one.
yes, yeah,
Um, and yeah, I don't know. And then I guess the last two good games last night were good games in theory, like that awful West Virginia BYU game.
terrible. Yeah,
West Virginia had 19 points at the under 16 timeout
yeah,
in the
just
second half.
unwatchable.
Yeah, that was horrendous. BYU dominated there. Yeah, West Virginia is a team. I like West Virginia, but I will be picking against them when the bracket comes out.
Yeah,
Um, and then I guess the last game of the night worth mentioning was Gonzaga. Went on the road, got another big win they needed. They were trending towards Dayton bubble territory last week, and they've gone on the road and gotten 2 quad 1 wins they needed bad this week. So they got a 20-point win at San Francisco, and they should be in pretty good shape now. No more Dayton in their future.
yeah, for sure.
Um, yeah, I mean, that'll about do it. I don't know if there's anything I missed that you wanted to bring up, but I think I hit all the big ones.
Yeah, conference tournaments start for a lot of these mid majors. Most of these should be really good. Big Sky should be really good. Summit should be
Summit
really
Week.
good. SoCon should be really good.
Yeah, I didn't mention for Jacob,
Sun
by the
Belt.
way. His prediction was
Yeah,
right. Greensboro did beat
yeah.
Sanford.
So some of these are like really, really hard to predict, and they're gonna obviously most of these are gonna be mid leagues. So yeah, just especially Big Sky, Summit, Northern Colorado should be the best Big Sky team. Expect them to win. Summit's kind of a toss-up. I picked, personally, I had South Dakota State, and then SoCon might be an unpopular selection, but I did end up going with Sanford to win that league.
It's very unpopular on this particular
Yes, of
program.
course, yeah. So wasn't
Cody
really
might
sure where to go
fire
with that
you
one.
for saying that.
Yeah. Wasn't really sure where to go with that one, but I was like, yeah, you know what? Like Sanford is not like as bad defensively as what they were like a year ago here, and like when in doubt in some of these leagues, like I'm just gotta go with the team that's scoring here. So, yeah, we'll see what Buckyball can do. Not very sold and confident with that pick, but yeah, that's a tough one there. And Sunbelt, that's a really tough one. Arkansas State has some really good non-conference results. They didn't really win most of those games, but they were really close with some really, really tough teams. But that's a really strong league this year. So yeah, just between Arkansas State, South Alabama, Troy, all three of those teams could be in the discussion. You would probably have to give them a really good look in a first round game against a pretty high seed. So yeah, conference tournaments getting started. Excited about those.
Let me give out one that feels like it's like automatic every year. I'm off camera right now because I'm looking at the odds in these different leagues. I don't know if you have any long shots but Patriot League Colgate is plus 370, and they do this every year. Um,
Yeah.
so I know this isn't the bet like as good a Colgate team as they've had in years past, but would not be surprised at all to just Colgate beats everybody by 30 in the Patriot League, and they're on to Dayton.
Yeah, I picked Bucknell to win Patriot League. Pretty much them and American have been the two best all season. So I would be pretty surprised if it wasn't one of them. So I picked Bucknell in that one. And then I think the most popular mid-major conference pick will be the Southland, and that's the McNeese Conference. And teams, it would be pretty surprising if Will Wade didn't just roll through that league. So we'll see what happens. But they have a little more competition from what they had last year. Last year they really had none. They had no conference competition. This year they got Texas A&M Corpus Christi on them. So they're still going to be the best team going into conference tournament play, but that'll be a fun one.
I mean, we mentioned Omaha. They won the regular season in the Summit League, and they're plus 550 to win that conference tournament.
Yeah.
Like, really good team there.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
Did you see the Sun Belt you mentioned, by the way, had, I believe it was 5 schools claimed regular season championships in that league?
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody made like a collage of like all the schools tweeting their graphic of regular. But yeah, take a look at some of those odds for sure, and throw down some long shot bets in those conferences. That'll be good stuff there. But like I said, the Colgate one of just like anybody looking to throw a bet out, I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm just basing that off past reputation, but I mean, how many years straight has Colgate won that Patriot League title?
I mean, Colgate's in there like feels like every year, and then because they have no athletes and play no defense, they just get promptly destroyed by everyone they play in NCAA tournament play.
Oh, so they will get destroyed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and I have a feeling they might get destroyed in conference tournament play as well. But yeah, that used to kind of be like Bucknell would win that a lot, and then American had a couple of years where they would win, and then BU, Boston University would win. So depending on who it is, unless it's American or Bucknell, they are going to Dayton probably for the first 4. So we'll see. But yeah, American and Bucknell are probably the only two that can survive not being on the 16 line, if that.
All right. Well, I think we'll call it a show. I think over 2 hours is enough, but we'll be back Friday. Jacob's still out for the count. He did wake up, sent a text, but we'll have him back Friday. and should be a fun show as we head in Friday to the last Saturday of the regular season. So we'll enjoy the last week of the regular season and the start of league tournament play this week. But thanks for watching. If you're tuning in, make sure you go to Sectator Media on YouTube, subscribe, give a like, share this, Twitter, at One and Shining Recap, trying to tweet a little bit more off there. So give us a follow for sure. And thank you everybody for tuning in. And we'll be back at it Friday.